One, two, two, and.
Zundithwale Nkosi yami, ngenxa yakho uzundilwele.
Oh.
Anguzwa.
1, 2, 3, and. One, two, three, and.
tembelona kamelife natisi tembelona kamelife natisi tembelona. She's Let's Ngosisikele i-Afrika, maluphakaliso khona lwayo, izwa imithandazo yethu. Lusapho lwayo, murena buluka sitshaba sa Yesu, ufedise lintwa limatshwenyeho. Usibuluke sitshaba sa Yesu, sitshaba sa South Africa, South Africa. To come together and united we shall stand. Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa, our land. Amadolo
the city of Ekurhuleni FBO, represented and led by Pastor Nzo, gender non-confirming groups, Save the Children on the promotion of the rights of children, the Commission for Gender Equality as represented by Commissioner O'Hara Ngoma Diseko, law enforcement stakeholders that has from time to time cooperate with the SAPS, our esteemed panelists at the Center of Socio-Economic Transformation and Empowerment of Women, Children and People with Disability, media personnel, and the community of Ekurhuleni in totality. The entire staff of the city of Ekurhuleni that has made this dialogue a success under the current condition of COVID-19 pandemic. Good morning. It is an honor for me to stand here and welcome you to the virtual dialogue that is sitting during the 64th anniversary of the 1956 heroic march that has led to us as the city paving the way to gender equality by 2030. We stand tall on the shoulders of our giant heroines that participated in the campaigns that led to the attainment of democracy in South Africa. We salute the volunteers of Isitalandwe, Dr. Nelson Mandela, who worked their struggles from the house 727 9th Street in Dugatolo, old location that led to the detention of 17 volunteers, of which 5 were women. We salute your contribution and we are honored that amongst them, we still celebrate the living legacy of Ma'am Adelaide Zuma Lipoko, as well as Mayor Elizabeth Masangane Mbele. Today marks an important milestone in our history as we declare war on the disease called gender-based violence and femicides, whereas the city of Ekurhuleni were calling open court, all hands on deck. The People's versus Gender-Based Violence and Femicides, a close quote. We are declaring war on gender-based violence in the city in view of the fact that we have identified your ugly tentacles. We know who you are, and we will strike you like the women of 1956 did to apartheid. We have noted the following and coming with open quotes, imbogoto, close quote to your direction. We rise to salute Mayor Margaret Gazo, whom as the city we recognize a voice as the voice of reason that led to the organization of the 1956 march. Indeed, our history will not be erased as we stand tall on the shoulders of giants that organized and delivered the petition of the 1956 march, led from the city of Ekurhuleni, led by Mayor Betha Qowa. We salute your contribution and honor all of you for your contribution. We salute all the women who contributed and are still contributing to the daily struggles of women. Now we're gonna now we're going to go to the message of support by the MMC for Community Safety, MMC Peladi Moko, MMC responsible for community safety. Over to you, MMC.
Thank you very much, fellow MMC Nkosi. Let me take this opportunity to greet the Executive Mayor, Cllr Masina, the entire leadership of the city, both political and administrative, Pastor Nzo, all the stakeholders, invited guests, may I say, all protocol observed. And ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Allow me to take this opportunity to thank the Office of the Executive Mayor and your office, MMC, for organizing such an important dialogue. A dialogue that should not just be a talk shop, but must result in some form of action which will eventually lead us to victory against the perpetrators of gender-based violence. I must put a disclaimer as early as now that I find it rather regrettable that a beautiful country such as ours is still grappling with this issue 25 years into our democracy. That victory against the then enemy called apartheid should have freed us from all forms of abuse. It was a victory that the then enemy called apartheid should have, the victory that our forebears paid the ultimate price so that we would be free and enjoy the benefits of living in a united, democratic, and non-sexist society. However, decades into our freedom, we are still sitting with this cancer that is eating away our societies a piece at a time. This is a cancer that we declared a war against some years back, but we do not seem to find a solution. Almost every day we wake up to incidents of GBV. Our women and children are violated in the most heinous of ways, and hardly a breakthrough is made. While we have seen some successes, especially in high-profile incidents, thousands of other cases go unresolved. What is worse is that most of these GBV are orchestrated and carried out by relatives on relatives. While the whole world is busy fighting a common enemy called COVID-19 lately, our situation in the country is more complex because we are seeing an increase in incidents of GBV during the lockdown. And instead of appreciating each other as families, we are busy maiming each other in the face of diversity. When are we going to wake up and smell the coffee? MMC, GBV is a societal issue, and we must appreciate activities of this nature because they bring together various stakeholders, including victims and perpetrators, in an effort to get to the bottom of the problem. Indeed, the theme would have not captured the situation we are faced with now any better. This is the time to literally call for all hands on the deck. People versus GBV. We must all stand up and recommit to the fight against GBV. We must do so driven by the ambition of putting an end to this crisis. Let us be the generation that defeated this scourge. Let us be the people who must be remembered as the liberators of women and children from the clutches of devilish clowns who are perpetuating violence against them. It does not make sense to sit here and deliberate on the matter only to down tools after the month of August has passed and only to pick up the pieces this time next year. GBV is a 365-day pandemic that needs us to respond to it on a daily basis. The EMPD and South African police services have their hands full trying to deal with the pandemic. We have social education and operations that lead to arrests, and sometimes we intercept attempts at GBV. However, this is not enough. GBV needs an activist society that is committed to ending it. We need people to become responsible citizens and report GBV in all its forms. They must also be willing to testify against the perpetrators, regardless of the relationship and their social status, so that we can out them away for a long time. One of the biggest problems we are facing, MMC, as a country is that people are not willing to testify nor report such incidents happening under their noses. How many times have we exposed to incidents where stepchildren are sexually abused by the stepfathers, with the mother knowing but deciding to keep quiet? This must not be allowed to continue. Now, as I was preparing for this session, something crossed my mind, MMC. I think it is time that we start a debate as a country.
MMC, unmute, please. MMC Mogo, please unmute.
Thank you, EM. I just hope I did not lose much. As I was preparing for this session, something crossed my mind. I think it is time that we start a debate as a country around the most appropriate punishment against perpetrators of GBV. South Africa is a democracy, and therefore we must robustly engage in such a debate with the aim of getting our government to review the punishment for these animals. We must be able to answer this question. Is the punishment meted out to these senseless thugs sufficient? And if the answer is no, then how do we change the status quo? This kind of a debate, Executive Mayor, must also be informed or supported by research to determine how other countries have managed to reduce and even eliminate GBV completely. I dare say that this kind of thinking and doing things will go a long way to shaping the future of this country. We cannot always gather and reflect on what our forebears said and wished for in the democracy, but the time is now to start shaping the laws that govern our country for the better. Events of this nature must not only be about sympathizing with the victims only, but more about shaping the future so that we can get rid of GBV and give hope to those who may be future victims. We must give hope to our women and children that we are determined to protect them at all costs. In conclusion, MMC, there's quite a number of operations and activities we do, but in respect of time, I would have shared the presentation with the DH so that it can then be circulated with the stakeholders to really have a sense of the work we do as EMPD together with South African Police Services. We must create a society where the girl child can walk freely in the park at night, knowing that her safety is guaranteed. We must create an environment that allows Gogo Mazibuko to walk to the shop in the evening without fear of being raped. Together, let us root out the thugs and put them away in this dream, if this dream is to be realized. Let the souls of those who have departed as a result of GBV rest in eternal peace. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MMC. I'm gonna go back to the ground rules again. I'm asking all of us to be disciplined. When we are not talking, switch off your mic and switch off your camera. Now we're gonna go to the next item, where we're gonna call up upon our survivor, Umama Mrs. Ntabeleng Dikhale. Untabiseng Dikhale, who's a survivor from the gender-based violence. Perpetual killing of women, in particular young women from intimate partners across the city, but gravely in Benoni, Davidson, Etwatwa, and very sporadic in Tembisa, are where this evil is showing its head as this hotspot. Sisintabiseng Dikhale, over to you.
Good morning, MMC, Norman Ngozi, and the rest of the panel. I'd like to thank everyone. I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to be able to share my story and my pain with you. Oh, by the way, my name is Ntabiseng, as you have said before, and I've also enjoyed the pain of this second pandemic called GBV that we are currently facing. Firstly, I'd like to start speaking about our justice system. I strongly feel our justice system has failed us so much. I've been married to my ex-husband for 10 years, and in the years that we've been together, the 10 years that we were together, I've experienced a lot of abuse. It first started with emotional abuse, and then it escalated to physical. I have been to the Brackenhurst police station several times. I've been there over, I don't know, I've even lost count, to seek help from and in all of this, I've never had any help. Instead,
Sisintabi saying, can you please unmute?
all right, I'm not sure when did it mute itself, but I hope I'm not going to have to go back to where I've started. But anyway, I was just on the issue of SAPS. I've been going to Brackenhurst police station for a while regarding my case, and I have not had any I don't know why, but this seems to be muting itself. I hope everybody can see me now, can hear me rather.
Please unmute, sister.
I've just unmuted. I'm not sure what's going on, but it seems to be muting itself without me unmuting. I don't know what the problem seems to be, but anyway, this all started, and I stayed in the marriage with the hope that things will work out, and it really escalated. It got to a point where my friend's car was torched when I had left my house to go to her place just to get a peace of mind. And it was at that point where I realized that everything is actually getting out of hand. And I've been everywhere trying to seek help, and I'm not getting any help from the police. So I then decided to move out of my matrimonial house to my mom's house. Few weeks after I had moved out of my house, on that particular day, which was the 3rd of March, 2019, I received a number of calls from my partner, who then kept on asking me my whereabouts. And on that same day in the evening, 2 men came into my mom's house, and I was with my mom and my 2 girls, aged 10 and 7. And we were attacked, and nothing much was said. They asked for money. We showed them our bags, said we can take anything. And we were then told to sit down. And as we sat on the couch, and my mom was then led to her bedroom by one of the guys. And this guy just, when I was sitting with my kids on the couch, started shooting. I was shot 4 bullets and went to hospital. I was in hospital for 2 months, to a point where I literally had to start from the beginning. I had to literally start learning how to walk. And it took me about 2 months or so forth to literally start walking. And from the shooting, it literally only took 6 months. We had to move out of my mom's house because now the kids were traumatized. Everyone was scared. They didn't want to be there. They felt, they were scared of their father. So we moved out into an estate where we thought it was safe. And somehow he gained access to my place, and he illegally gained access to my place. He sneaked into my apartment, and on September the 27th in the morning, and he strangled me. My children were there on that morning, and my helper, and they had to go through all of this trauma of hearing their mother scream while being strangled by their father. On that same day, collapsed, and I was unconscious, taken to hospital, and while I was in hospital, he was arrested, but he went out on bail with the charges of assault. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, what kind of justice system do we have here? This person has so many cases against him. Nothing has done. I've never had a follow-up from any of the police. And now they're just releasing him on assault. And I mean, he could come back for me. You know, I'm in hospital, unconscious. He could come back and finish me off. But he was just, let out. And only because my matter was out there in the media, then his bail was revoked. When his bail was revoked, he applied for bail, and he was denied bail. The same day that he was denied bail, the docket went missing. When the docket went missing, I was promised and told that there's footage and that I would be able to see how the docket went missing. And I waited. I've been waiting. I made calls to the head of prosecutors to say what is happening, and nothing. I've just been doing follow-ups, and I haven't had any response from anyone. Eventually, he got another lawyer to represent him and reapplied for bail, and was granted bail in January this year. That meant we had to run for our lives. I then had to relocate from where I was staying with my kids, get them a new school, get rid of my car, just get anything, just literally just anything that would lead him to us. So any trace, we had to just try and not, to get rid of any trace. And he got bail, and when I questioned the reason why he got bail, they said it was due to the new facts, and new facts that was given to us were nothing new. It was the same reasons that he gave when he was denied bail, so I could not understand. And it is unfortunate that when you are dealing with a very powerful man who's connected, who's financially powerful, who knows people in Parliament, your case will not go anywhere. You will not be heard. The trauma that this whole thing has brought into my family, my mom, my children, it is just beyond. We've had to even change the first IO that we had, which is the investigation officer, because the bail condition says that he needs to speak to the investigation officer should he needs to come to Gauteng, because he was now supposed to be based in Limpopo. But he's come numerous times. He's always here in Gauteng without the IO. So due to that, I had to go to the police station and ask that the IO get changed, which then that was done. and I got the new IO. The same problem that I was experiencing with the first IO, I'm currently experiencing that. I honestly want to understand and know what it is and what it means to be a survivor, because I believe as a survivor, you are there to speak for those who could not speak for themselves, and the ones that we have lost through this gender-based violence. But we have knocked at every door, and I have not sought any help. So I want to know, what is it as a survivor? Does one need to actually die in order for people to stand up and be able to fight? Because it seems you are living with this every day. You live in fear. You don't know what comes next. No one is there to help. I mean, in South Africa, it has become a breeding ground for perpetrators who do not just fear for justice system. I mean, the justice system has really failed us so much. We don't know where to go. I find that each time someone dies and it reaches the news, the media, then there's a urge for emotions of people ignites. People just want to go out and cry and few weeks later, what happens? It all dies down. I don't know if it's the court that's just failing us, because each time we go there, it gets reminded, and people just lose faith. The support, I mean, I had the ANC Women's League behind me, and I still wonder why they were there then, because I have no support from anyone. I keep fighting. I still insist that I am going to knock on every door. I will not stop, because we live in fear. We are constantly have to, I mean, police are not helping us. They are literally now doing the psychologist's jobs. Instead of helping and arresting these people, they just want to talk through this whole thing, and that has not helped this whole situation. I am crying out to everyone out there. The mayor, please, I am dealing with someone who's powerful, who I know, I've looked through the panel here, who is in connection with quite a few people who are on the panel. I don't know how far this matter is going to go, but I'm crying out for help. I need help. We cannot go through. I have 2 little girls whom I need to be strong for, but I can't at this rate, whom are in fear of their dad. I cannot even go visit my mom. I can't even go there because I'm fearful of being around there. I can't go to my family. I can't visit anyone because of the fear of this man that I'm living with, whom is just above the law. I have footages that I've shown. I have called the police to say he is here. He is here in Gauteng and he's not meant to be here. But nothing has happened. Please, I'm crying out for help. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Sister Tabiseng. Each and every day, women are being abused. Women are being killed by their partners. Women are being killed and abused by the fathers of their children. Women are not safe. Our president had came up with a stiff bail regulations, but that does not help women. Women are not even safe in the hands of the police. women are regarded as people that doesn't matter in this life that we're living in. But women are crying each and every day. But we're saying the time is now. Enough is enough. We can't allow this thing to continue further like this. Whether one is connected to a higher office, it doesn't make that person to be superior in the hands of the law. Thank you, Sis Ntsabseng. Now we're going to go to our next speaker, who's going to talk on the impact of COVID-19 on women and children. Umama Umandisa Kanyile, from the rise against gender-based violence. Sis Mandisa, over to you.
Ngiyabonga, MMC. Thank you everyone for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today. All protocols observed. I don't actually know who's in the meeting other than the executive mayor and a couple of MMCs. So please take my all protocols observed with respect. So in terms of the COVID-19 lockdown period, it's been very distressing for women and children in particular. I think as a country, we were really ill-prepared when it comes to gender-based violence. The mechanisms that we should have put in place prior to the lockdown, we did not. And so I feel that essentially we were caught with our pants down as a country. We as an organization, Rise Up Against Gender-Based Violence, runs a evacuation service for survivors within the Gauteng region. Now, what does that entail? When people tell survivors that they should leave, they don't actually know what that looks like and how it plays itself out. And most of the time, you find that the most dangerous time for a survivor to leave an abusive relationship is when they decide. Sorry, the most dangerous time for a survivor is when they decide that they're actually leaving an abusive relationship. That is when perpetrators turn to murder. That is when perpetrators become more violent and more aggressive because they feel that they are losing control of the survivor. Now, the simple thing of just being able to pack your bags and your kids and leave, it seems simple, but it actually isn't, because you're trying to do so safely, you're trying to do so without triggering the perpetrator, you're trying to do so without loss of life, without injury, etc. And a lot of women can't actually do that. And so the service that we provide is that you basically send us a WhatsApp or an SMS, and you let us know where you are, whether or not your perpetrator is armed or not, when you'd like to leave, how many children you want to take with you, do you have pets, do you want to move to a friend or family member, do you want to be taken to a shelter, etc. And then we arrange the evacuation with you so that we can be able to come with SAPS to your premises and physically remove you from your home. Now, we only started doing this service particularly within the lockdown period, one, because women didn't have permits to move around. So, for example, if you were living in Pretoria and you wanted to go to the East Rand to go to a family member or a place of safety, you wouldn't be able to do that because traveling from one place to another wasn't allowed. So these are some of the protocols that we had put in place for lockdown, but didn't actually consider or understand what that looks like and what those consequences would be for women. Secondly, women are trapped in their homes with the perpetrators. And so their usual circle of support, which would be colleagues, friends and family members, was not available to them. And so people who would normally see warning signs or who would see the blue eye or all of those kind of things were no longer available. And so perpetrators were basically just having the time of their lives because they could abuse women with absolutely no consequence. What we also saw in terms of economic violence, I'm sure you're all aware that there was a serious food security issue around the COVID-19 lockdown period. And you saw perpetrators actually starving their families as forms of punishment. So we, for example, sent food parcels to a couple of families in Tembisa in particular, where the perpetrators were eating at the girlfriend or somewhere else and leaving the house with absolutely no groceries, knowing full well that the wife or the family members are informal traders, didn't have access to being able to make means for themselves. And so food parcels then became necessary for them. We know how inefficient the food parcel system was. We know how so many people were not able to get their 350 grants, etc. So it was really quite a mess in terms of economic vulnerability of survivors in particular. Also, the criminal justice system, and we just heard from our survivor, Untabi Singh, the criminal justice system continues to fail survivors in the most remarkable ways. Protection orders are not implemented correctly. You see survivors that are pleading for help because they've gone through the system, they've opened cases, they're not seeing arrests, they're not seeing the cases taken seriously. Just before the lockdown itself, one of the women that we had been helping to try and leave her perpetrator lost her life. What took place was that he burnt her alive. And then he claims that it was actually a suicide, that she basically put fuel on herself and lit herself because she was committing suicide because she felt guilty for cheating on him. And the police actually believed that story. And by the way, this case also took place within the Ekurhuleni municipality. So, I mean, if there's anyone that can help us follow it up and try to see justice for this woman, she was a foreign national and so was her husband. And he managed to flee the country just after her death. And so we're not actually seeing justice for that particular survivor. We saw migrant women going through absolutely horrendous situations, over and above the fact that they didn't get any aid from the state. They were being abused and they had trouble accessing shelters because of their status. Because some shelters, if you don't have an ID number, they don't take you. So, I mean, these are some of the gaps in the system that we really need to fix. And going forward, not just in lockdown conditions, but outside of lockdown conditions, we need to provide responsive services that actually speak to the needs of survivors in the context of gender-based violence. During the lockdown period also, and the police stats will reflect this as well, we saw a rise in domestic rape in particular. So what does that mean? That is spousal rape, so marital rape, date rape within the same context. You saw a lot of molestation, child abuse in particular. And so people were basically being raped by family members and even siblings during the lockdown period. And I mean, what kind of a sick society do we live in where people can't even be safe in their own homes? Where the environment that's supposed to keep them secure and feeling love and a space where they're supposed to go to for shelter is actually the place that becomes a nightmare for them. I think what we need to focus on is a proper, comprehensive social behavioral change program that speaks to what the drivers of gender-based violence are, changes unhealthy norms and practices, and that addresses the toxic masculinity within our societal context. I think we really can't start this fight without putting so much effort into the prevention methods that in order for us to actually prevent this from happening, because clearly we're failing at responding. I think also one of the interventions that this country could have implemented that has worked well, specifically within the lockdown context, because globally, with other countries that also locked down, you saw an increase in domestic violence incidences, is to have a properly resourced, dedicated hotline for perpetrators. So what does this mean? A hotline that specifically tries to talk down those that call in and say, I'm about to abuse my wife, I'm about to abuse my kids, they've made me angry in such and such ways, etc., and try to actually talk down perpetrators. Because it's important to also provide psychosocial support services for perpetrators so that they don't offend. I think that speaks to some of the prevention modalities that we can adopt, and it has proven to work well. Another suggestion that we have as an organization, and this obviously would need some kind of legislative reform, is that currently the shelter system doesn't actually speak and respond properly to the system, to gender-based violence. What do I mean by that? Why is it that the survivor and the survivor's children are the ones that need to move out of the home instead of the perpetrator? There are countries in the world where the perpetrators are the ones that go to the shelter instead of the survivor. And what happens in that situation? You actually see that they are forced into a program that speaks to anger management, that does proper counseling for them, and that intervenes whether or not there is a case pursued against the perpetrator or not. So you start seeing some kind of healing, some kind of, and the kids be the ones moved from their homes, kept far from their jobs, etc., and have their lives destabilized and lose everything because the perpetrator gets to stay in the home. For me, it feels like you're actually punishing the survivor for trying to leave and punishing the survivor for coming out about the violence. And so I think we need to create a society that is survivor responsive, that is survivor focused and survivor centered, and that actually speaks to the needs of the survivor, and not only that, but also believes the survivor. I'm going to pause there. Thank you so much.
Will note down for action. Now we're gonna go to the next item, and colleagues follow to try and observe time limit that were given to them. Now we're gonna go to Babushayi from Cllr Mzwandile. Let him tell us what is it that they are doing as men around the issue of gender-based violence. Let him tell us why women are being abused by the people whom they called their husbands, whom they are called their boyfriends, people who are supposed to take care of women, people who are supposed to nurture a woman, people who are supposed to protect women against any violence against women. Babushayi, want you to tell us today as to we're tired of rhetoric talks, we're tired of doing gender-based violence dialogues without actions. So we're gonna hand over to you. Babushayi is gonna talk to us from the main GBV and femicide from Cllr Mzwandile. Over to you, Patrick Shayi. Babushayi, over to you. Usasekhona about Patrick Shayi. Okay, now that Ubabu Patrick Shayi usanyamalele kancane, hope he'll come back. We're gonna go to the next item, which is breaking all barriers to effective response. And
I'm trying to unmute here.
You're trying to unmute. Are you winning?
Yeah, it says I'm not.
No, but we can hear you. Babushayi?
Oh, you can hear?
Yeah, we can hear you. Just switch on your video so that we can listen to you. Yeah, siyakuzwa baba, ungaqhubeka. Babushayi, it seems as if your connection is lost. We'll jump over to Ubaba Unzo, Pastor Nzo. Then we'll come back to you after Ubaba Unzo, so that you can come back, because when I check here, it seems as if you have a problem with your connection. So now the next item that's gonna be done by Pastor Cllr Nzo. It's around breaking all the barriers of effective response and improving coordination. Over to you, Pastor Nzo.
Thank you, Ma'am MMC, to the Executive Mayor, Honorable Mayor, the MMC, Councillor MMC Nomadlozi, and the distinguished guests to Mpagati. Thank you for the opportunity I'm accorded just to make a contribution to this evil in society. Number one, we recognize that when we're talking about barriers to response, what is response? The response, we're talking about a collective effort by all the institutions in society, by all the trusted institutions in society, to stake their reputation to save someone that is in a problem. Of course, coming from a scriptural perspective, from a biblical perspective, I'm reminded about the fact that when Jesus, Peter was walking in the water, he sank. Jesus stretched out his hand to save him from sinking. He must have cried out to Jesus, and Jesus heeded the call, because at the end of the day, they both entered into the boat. He was safe. He moved from a sinking position to a safe position where he could breathe properly and everything could do. So we believe it's a Christian voice. It's a
Betenzo, please unmute.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Thank you very much to the Executive Mayor, to MMC Nomadlozi, and to distinguished guests, to Mpagati Wonke. Thank you for having me to talk on this subject, the most important subject of response and barriers to response and coordination. Number one, what is a response? A response is a concerted effort that is carried out by all sections and all organs of society to help those that are in need and those that are whose lives are in danger. When you look at the biblical perspective from Matthew chapter 14, we know that Peter was with the disciples in the boat, and they were doing what they usually do to carry out their daily tasks. And he stepped out to follow Jesus, like people step out to, to do work, to do good, who feel that when life needs to progress and life needs to go on. And when Peter began to sink, I can imagine he cried out to Jesus, and Jesus stretched out his hand, saved him, and safely both of them got into the boat, which means there was a response from Jesus, from someone who was in pain, from someone who was in trouble, from someone who was sinking, and he was isolated, he was alone, and the rest of the people were onlookers, they were watching. It's amazing that people who were just watching could not save, but those who were determined were able to save, and Jesus saved him, and they made their way back into the boat, which means it's a biblical understanding in the biblical response, Christian response, that people need to be saved, and we need to respond properly with the right kind of response. Now, number one, we can't respond if we are not organized ourselves as all organs of society, if we're not brave enough to stake alive to save someone in danger. Response should be our collective strategy. It should not be an isolated thing that I do or a church does. It should be a citywide strategy that is built upon proper partnerships between churches, between women's groupings, between the city, between all political formations, and between everybody else, so that we make our presence felt, so that we embarrass the perpetrators. So it's become important for us to make sure that we do it like that. Now, of course, the topic suggests that when you want to respond, you will always be met up with barriers. Barriers that are there in number one can be classified under four types of barriers. We have barriers that are linked to those that are abused for the first time, because what they do is that instead of people saving them and responding correctly, people have a tendency to build a capacity to take more pain. Statements are said like awungakhathazeki uyaqala umxolele umyeni wakho.
Can you unmute Pastor Nzo?
Okay, someone keeps on unmuting.
Iphinde futhi.
Someone keeps on unmuting me, cutting me out. Okay, I'll watch it closely. So, barriers that are linked to those who are abused for the first time. And those that are abused for the first time is because instead of us saving them and responding correctly, we build a capacity to take more pain. And sometimes the first time is the right time to respond with force. People say, I know Mienwako is your husband, he's going to get better. So sometimes there are barriers to those response because we feel the first time is not so bad, but the first time is actually the seed that is sown. It must be cut there. The second time, the second barrier that we have are those that are linked to those who have been repeatedly abused but are afraid to lose benefits because they're afraid they don't know whether to go, they've got children, and the people consider things like that before they want to stop the practice. I want to say to those that we also need to strengthen and find a way as people who respond to soften the heart of those that are abused, for them to see that calling for response is not shaming your partner, it's actually doing the right thing. Society will only be as strong as as strong as we are weak, strengthening our weakest links. The third one is that we've got barriers for those who are psychological, barriers that are psychological, for those who are connected to things like public shame, stigma, and embarrassment, who feel, hey, I want to report the matter, but what people don't know about me, what if my name is in this Facebook and whatever social media? I think our barriers is fear of being exposed. So we need to craft a document as collective strategic responders to make sure that we promise to protect, to not to divulge the names of the people, and to make sure that their lives are safe so that they can trust us, because the response will be as good as how well people trust us. The last one is where there's grievous bodily harm, where someone is stabbed or maybe killed, and we need someone to speak out, not just only going to the hospital and running away, but we need to speak out. You hiding out and not pointing out the offender does not help the cause. So we need to respond not only to your hurt, we need to respond to the offender as well. He must be arrested. It's us to think about knowing that socially, Bopa, Valela is not a bad term. It's actually how we're going to save the nation. It's important that we deal with those barriers, and how do we coordinate this? Number one, on coordination, it's very important for us who are prepared as we're talking to the city that our discussion doesn't end as NDM. We form the respective committees, the respective bodies that can be watchdogs at all levels of society, so that our coordination can be strong, so that we don't take too long in our response time. Some of the strongest civic and social responses and governmental responses are those that take a week later. We need to be promptly on the spot, and we need to make sure that we detail how we promise the community how we want to respond. So in that coordination, we need leaders of faith, we need social workers, we need people who are going to make sure they're coming down the social work, while the rest of the police, they do the BOPA work. So we need to be organized. I'm calling out for 4 things. Number one, I'm calling out for a response team. I'm calling out for a coordinated effort between all organs of society. Number one, to organize themselves. Number two, to make sure that we are strategic. And number three, we don't show our face when it's difficult, but we are just in people's faces. We are there all the time. And lastly, I trust that as a Cllr has been a leader in many things, there'll be a leader in this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pastor Nzo. The issues that you have raised are critical. That as women also, when we open cases, sometimes we'll find ourselves forgiving the same perpetrator. Women can be abused and forgive till the end, till the perpetrator kill that woman. We appreciate your contribution. Now we're gonna go back to Babu Shai. That he must tell us, Ogoti, as their organization that is called Cllr Mzwandile. What is it that they are discussing? What are the plans that they have to combat all these unnecessary killings of women and children and the abuse of women and children? Babushai, before you come in, Sisintapseng, Buti Tamsi Makenza, we note all the comments that you have put in our inbox. We're gonna talk to you and answer all the comments that were sent to us. But now, over to you, Babu Patrick Shai.
Thank you, Mama, and let me acknowledge His Excellency the Mayor, the MNCs that are here, the panelists that are here today. I want to say, Uti, it's not easy to speak as a perpetrator and try and give advice as a reformed and former perpetrator of GBV. But however, I'm going to share with you my personal journey of shame as a perpetrator of domestic violence. But I want to confine my presentation, my sharing with you, to intimate partner violence. And this is my story. And in telling this story and sharing it with everyone here, I might say things that are unpalatable. I might say things that you find you are conflicted with. I might say things that requires us to look deeper into why there is gender-based violence, domestic violence, and why are we missing out on homing in and creating the necessary impact with all our campaigns. And this is my story. It's divided into 3 segments. The first, I'm going to give my childhood impressions. And in that, I will speak to what I saw as a child and what I heard as a child. And the second part of my story would speak about the character that I became after being exposed to the things that I was exposed to. And this would mean how I became a dominant male who instilled fear. And how that was done was through violence. And the last section of my discussion would be on the change in me. And the change in me would talk to calling myself out and cutting the chain, gender-based violence and domestic violence in my life. Now, my childhood impressions. 1, I grew up witnessing domestic violence in my home. It became a feature. It became a language that was spoken. I witnessed my uncle beating up his 2 wives. And growing up, I thought maybe that's the way to go. And as if that was not enough, my stepfather beat up my mom pink and blue. And that for me reinforced the belief that violence was the language. And this created an impression, or left an indelible impression in my mind. And outside the domestic sphere, I then saw, as a young boy growing, how the big brothers, Abu Bras Bani, would treat Abu Sisis Bani. It was very, very disturbing in retrospect, how the big brothers, Abu Bras Bani, would strip naked their girlfriends, our sisters, at the time, because they had bought them this and that. And for whatever reason that they find them to have done wrong, they would be stripped naked in Batayami. I bought you this, I bought you that, I bought you that. and then paraded them, left them paraded naked in the streets with only their panties. I saw women and young girls, sisters, being beaten up by their boyfriends. And it left an impression in me that this was the way of life. So in this section, I'm talking about the rite of passage. Yeah, a young boy growing, excessively exposed to violence as a means to getting what you want. And I don't seek to come across as if I'm making excuses. And I'm not saying this is a studied presentation that I'm making. It is what I lived. It is the impressions that were made on me. So on the domestic front, with all these impressions, the lesson was that for a man to be respected and loved by a partner, she had to be disciplined through violence. It is amazing and incredibly so that sometimes we are not aware of what the mind can receive and store. And on the public front, seeing big brothers beating up their girlfriends and stripping them naked instilled in me the belief that violence was the only way a man should be, so that the women can know their places, that they can be beaten up even in public places. This for me then leads me to, of all those things that I was subliminally taught without any intention. I was not chosen to be a student of this institution of violence, but these lessons were available. And this is the person that I became, the character that I became. I became a dominant male who believed that violence was the right language and the only language. But then maybe we would want to know why violence. I looked at it as a means to gaining control. 1, gaining control over my partner. 2, to eliminate competition, which meant dealing with my own insecurities. So if I bring in violence and I control it through violence, I'm making sure that my interest is secured, that she cannot wander around, that she cannot have or be seen by other people. That was the reason for violence. And thirdly, it was to silence the opinion yak, because that's what that's what we do as perpetrators. That's what we do as abusers, that we want to silence you. Whatever is happening in the intimate relationship, it must remain there. It's a domestic matter. It is not for the public. And the fourth point would be to isolate. I'm beating you up to control you, to silence you, to eliminate any interest around you or competition, and most importantly, is to isolate you. I'm making you vulnerable, because then by doing so, I'm making sure that you have no relationship with the outside world. I then force you as my victim, as my partner, to respect me. And that gives me complete control and ownership over you as a victim. And this is unfortunately what I became. This is unfortunately what society structured me as. This is unfortunately what perhaps we might be missing out in our campaigns as to what is it that we need to correct. I'll then go to the next slide. I'm just trying to save time. All of that in my intimate partner violence that I dished out, it completed the rite of passage. In my marriage, I believed I was bigger and better than my uncle and my stepfather. So whatever violence that they did, that they exposed me to, I wanted to do it and perform it a little bigger. I wanted to be better than them in the perpetuation of that violence. So I became a bigger monster than they were. My stepfather, and I'm not making any excuses, and my uncle, these are the men that informed my thoughts and shaped my character. And this, I'm not trying to make any excuses. In the public domain, I believed I was better than the big brother because I did not strip my partner or any other woman and paraded them naked. It made me feel like I was slightly better and less humiliating than the big brother that I grew under. What I needed to do, and this is what we are not doing. We have all these wonderful campaigns which are necessary. We have all these places of safety for the victims, which are absolutely necessary. What has not happened is what happened to me. When the country says men must call each other out, I, as Patrick Shai, a perpetrator of domestic violence at that time, I called myself out. I realized while we were doing Soul City that it was revealed to me that what I was doing as a perpetrator of domestic violence was wrong. That I needed not to continue committing domestic violence. I realized that I was hurting the people that I had professed to love. My wife and my children, the community that I lived in, the expanded family whose name I uphold. I was hurting my country. I was contributing to the hurt that women were feeling throughout the country. And this revelation came to me in and around 1989 when we were doing Soul City. And I saw this while we were forming the Domestic Violence Act, where everything was transposed. The scene itself where we're shooting the violence became my house. My screen wife and screen family became my family. And I did not like what God showed me in that vision. And I walked away saying, it cannot be me. It cannot be me. From that day on, I think I met what I call my Damascus experience. So I'm sharing this and saying to Majida, it does not help us too much. It will help us if I could call myself out and say, what I am doing is wrong. I'm aware that my kin, my brother, is doing this, is perpetuating violence against women and children. And I cannot afford to be silent. I called myself out because I realized that as a perpetrator, I was enabled by a patriarchal society at all levels of institutions. In Goguma Podisen, we complain about how domestic violence is ill-policed and ill-managed, how the protection orders are ill-managed and ill-policed. It is because, as men, we have not come to accept, one, that what we are doing is wrong. 2, that what is supporting us is wrong. 3, that we can do something on a personal level as much. And in closing, I will also say, for us to have an impact in our campaigns against gender-based violence and domestic violence, it will take each and every man to acknowledge that he, as a man, he is an enabler of domestic violence and gender-based violence. It will take each and every one of us as Majida to stop gender-based violence. It will take for men to feel the pain that women are going through, to experience, to feel, to imagine the sense of loss at the hands of a man when femicide is committed, that we stand up as Majida and say, I, Patrick Shai, I'm going to take actions to dim the lights, the candle lights, the candles that we light at memorial services for a woman that has been killed by our actions as Majida. And I would say, from Kulumandoda perspective, what we are doing is to help society to discover or to identify the perpetrator before they can commit an act of perpetration. What I've come to realize is that we only speak about the perpetrator after a woman is beaten up or after a woman has been killed. So every one of us is a potential perpetrator as a man. The only thing is that we don't know about you until your partner takes you or calls you out or opens a case against you. In worst case scenarios, we only know about you when you have killed a woman. So we're calling Majida out to say, come to us, let's help you. Before you raise that hand, come talk to us at Kulumandoda. We can help you to change, just like I changed. We can help you to not to journey the painful journey that I journeyed. And I say to Majida, it becomes difficult to heal the wounds because gender-based violence, domestic violence, it leaves women scarred. It leaves society scarred. I may be changed today, but I cannot heal the wounds, the pain that are caused on my wife and my children, the pain that I've brought to my country, the shame that I brought to my country through my actions. I cannot. It doesn't matter how many or how much forgiveness I get, I cannot wish it away. So I say to Majida and all men in South Africa, do not travel the journey that I have traveled. You can come back. We can arrest gender-based violence. We can stop femicide, but it starts with you. It will not take campaigns. It will not take long sentences. 2, we have to arrest it before it happens. And it will take you as a man to say, I do not want to continue, and seek out help. I shall pause there. Thank you.
Thanks, Baba.
Sorry, ma. Sorry. Just in closing, for me to change, it required me to cut the chain of gender-based violence. I did not want my 2 boys to become like me or the worst of me, because I become my father, the worst of my father and the worst of my uncle. I wanted to give my boys an opportunity to be human beings. If it has to be a man, rather choose to be a human being. I shall pause there. Thank you.
Thank you, Babushai, for calling out on all males abayenza gender-based violence, that they must come and be part of Kulumandoda so that they can learn more. Ngibona isandla sika Sisipuleng Likhwati. Sisipuleng Likhwati, can you please go on our inbox and write there in the inbox anything that you want to say to us, because I see your hand is being raised up. Now we're going to come to our keynote address. Firstly, what I would like to say is we acknowledge more than 100 participants who have connected and all that are viewing from all our customer care centers, including our social networks. Now we're going to call the choir to welcome our executive mayor so that he can give us a keynote address. Can you please sing the song Senzeni Na? Then after that, executive mayor, over to you. Choir, can you please sing the song Senzeni Na?
Speaker, the Chief Whip, the Chair of Chairs, our honorable members that are here. Also take this opportunity to greet the City Manager, Dr. Imogen Mashazi, our senior managers that are also part of the panel, Let me also greet the leadership of the church, as led by Pastor Cllr Mzwandile, but also leaders of business, labor, and most importantly, the civil society organization. Let me also greet members of the law enforcement agencies that are with us, members of the media, and all the guests that are participating. And I also wish to adopt and say all protocol observed. Program Director, we've listened on various speakers on topics, and ours is to make a contribution. But I think that before I even start is to say that we really need to act decisively, especially in our space where we govern. It is an honor to speak before you today as we mark this month that is as much for a commemoration as it is for the reflection, which is what we are doing today. The month of August is undoubtedly one of the most important in our national calendar, for it is a month dedicated to the giant whose shoulders of our democracy stands, women who dared to rise, and in so doing taught us never to dishonor the cause of freedom. We have been able to make our stride in this young democracy only because women of our country served, suffered, and sacrificed, and undoubtedly they continue to do. This dialogue takes place in the middle of the devastating global health pandemic that has seen the world turn us under economically and socio-politically. The effect of COVID-19 pandemic goes beyond the crisis of the virus that has affected our health system and infrastructure in the main. It extends to the many ways in which the true nature of inequality manifest themselves in the labor market and the very economies that defines the world. A few weeks ago, the National Income Dynamics Coronavirus Rapid Mobile Survey released a report to the public. According to this report, at least 3 million jobs have been lost in South Africa during the lockdown. Of the 3 million people who have lost their jobs and income stream between February and May, 2 million of those are women. In addition to this, children have also been impacted, with at least 15% of people saying that their children had gone hungry in the last 7 days during the survey, while about 7% said their children went hungry almost every day and every day. It is that the lockdown exacerbated a historic and systematic problem. Women were already in the precarious position before the virus struck South Africa and the world over. However, they have suffered the most during the pandemic in terms of job losses, and one factor contributing to this is disproportionate role played by men and women in childcare. Because women are more likely to look after the children in South Africa, increased vulnerability amongst women will translate into increased vulnerability amongst children. And just as the productive space is both gendered and racialized, so too is the impact of COVID-19 lockdown. Pre-existing inequalities in South Africa have been exacerbated with jobs and income losses concentrated amongst already disadvantaged people, specifically Black women, who in the main have low wage earners across the globe, and specifically in our country. Women earn less, save less, and hold less secure jobs, and are more likely to be employed in the informal sector. They have less access to social protection and are the majority of a single-parent household. Their capacity to absorb economic shocks is therefore less than that of a man. Evidently, the lockdown has also exposed the extent to which women experience violence in many ways, including economically. There are 2 million women in our country who have been rendered without an income in a space of few months is an indicative of. It is for these reasons that those who contend that black women in South Africa are confronted with 3 pandemics, namely the COVID-19 pandemic, the economic pandemic resulting from the lockdown, as well as the gender-based violence and femicide pandemic, are providing a candid analysis. Fellow participant, the intersection between these 3 pandemics is undeniable, at least insofar as a lockdown resulting of the COVID-19 that has created a gendered economic inequality, has also heightened the incidence of gender-based violence in some of the families. And we have heard today some of the most horrifying stories that we should attend to as the authority in the city. Some of the drivers of this gender-based violence in this pandemic include stress, the disruption of social and protective networks, loss of income, and the decreased access to services, all which exacerbate the risk of violence, especially to affect women. In many countries, including our own, where people are encouraged or required to stay at home, the risk of intimate partners' violence is likely to increase. In addition, due to the growing rates of infection amongst healthcare workers, access to sexual and reproductive health services will likely become more limited. Other services such as hotlines, crisis centers, shelters, legal aid and protection services may also be reduced, making it difficult for women to access few resources to help them that would normally be available to assist them. But these drivers are specific to the lockdown. Drivers of gender-based violence are factors which lead to perpetuate the scourge. Ultimately, gender power inequality rooted in patriarchy is the primary driver which confront us. Gender-based violence and intimate partner violence in particular is more prevalent in societies where there is a culture of violence and where male superiority is treated as a norm, as I'm sure many of us have heard what Babushai had to say on this specific issue. A belief in male superiority can also manifest in men feeling entitled to sex with women, strict reinforcement of gender roles and hierarchy, and punishment of the transgression. Women have low social value and power, and associating masculinity with the control of women. These factors interact with several drivers such as social norms, which may be cultural or religious, low levels of women's empowerment, lack of social support, as well as socio-economic inequality in the main, as well as issues of substance abuse. In many cultures, men's violence against women is considered acceptable within certain settings or situations. This social acceptability of violence makes it particularly challenging to address gender-based violence effectively. In South Africa in particular, gender-based violence pervades the political, economical, and social structure of society and is driven strongly by patriarchal social norms and complex and intersectional power inequality, including those of gender, race, class, and sexuality. It is for these reasons that the theme of our dialogue today is all hands on the deck, the people's versus gender-based violence and femicide is especially profound. It recognizes, amongst other things that are necessary, to transdisciplinary, multidimensional, and multisectoral approach to the resolution of gender-based violence and femicide. Such approach centers all agencies of socialization in fight and contend that unless all hands are on the deck, there is no possibility for the way that this violence that visits women and children can be dealt with. Ladies and gentlemen, in order that our intervention yield meaningful results, we must necessarily begin our analysis of the problem with the objective and then bring down to the subjective. As such, it becomes important that we reflect on the gender-based violence and femicide situation in the city of Ekurhuleni, where we have a better chance of making a sustainable challenge and fashioning higher civilization. The critical challenges, as reflected by SAP statistics, demonstrate that the prevalence of female and Tembisa and domestic violence being prevalent in the south that include Katlehong, Germiston, and Thokoza. Sexual assault is common in all the three regions, demonstrating that the universality of the most heinous crime against women. Just 2 months ago, a woman was brutally murdered in Brakpan and her body was stored in a bucket filled with cement. You can just imagine how horrible the situation is. Around the same time, a young woman was found burned beyond recognition on the street in Mayfield, just day after a woman's lifeless body was found in a maize field in Benoni. While all these diabolical crimes happened during the lockdown, the reality is that women's bodies have been a crime scene for a long time here in South Africa and here in Ekurhuleni. It is for this reason, it was this that resulted in the establishment of the Gender-Based and Femicide National Strategic Plan 2020-2030 that set out to provide a cohesive strategic framework to guide national response to the gender-based violence and femicide crisis that South Africa finds itself in. Motivations for this plan arises from the bold demands by women across the country who marched in August 2018 under the banner #TotalShutdown, and the subsequent call by women from all walks of life who attended the presidential summit in November 2018. The plan represents a clear national response to call by activists for government of South Africa and all living in South Africa to make our country a safe place for women, children, as well as gender and non-conforming individual in their lives, as well as being celebrated and valued. In addition to this, it gives impetus to the outcome of the third National Development Plan goal, which states that all people in South Africa should be safe, should feel safe and free. It was against this background that the NDP and our own assessment of the crisis, that upon the assumption of duty in 2016, we immediately prioritized the collation of empirical data on the crisis of gender-based violence here in the city of Ekurhuleni, so as to have a concrete data to inform our own subjective intervention in line with the NDP. Through our Directorate of Women in the Office of the Executive Mayor, we launched a social audit report that helped us to focus on gender-based violence. The social audit report gives us a concrete picture based on the statistics of the exact nature of these abuses against women. The prevalence of the domestic violence, street harassment, sexual abuses, and neglect by communities inform us that we need to pick up our socks and actively work to change the attitude of the abuse that is happening in our communities. The Women's Directorate, working together with the Department of Women, Youth, and People with Disability in the Presidency, conducted a workshop on gender-responsive budgeting, planning, monitoring, and evaluation, with a purpose to assist government institutions to build a gender-responsive planning, budgeting, monitoring, and evaluation system, and contribute to improving the country's performance on gender equality, women's emancipation, and the overall developmental goals. The city also collaborated with Thuthuzela Center in Ekurhuleni in response to the prevention, ensuring adequate care, support, and healing of victims of violence, and strengthening the economic power of women. We have also constructed the second stage women's shelter in Thokoza and another one in Tembisa. These centers, these are the centers where abused women can go receive shelter and support that they require. I do note that there are firm proposals that are beginning to come out that maybe time has arrived that we think about those centers actually for the actual abusers. They must go there, and maybe we might need to do some more research work, whether or not can't we as a city pass a specific bylaw in relation to this issue, where we can be able to go and fetch the perpetrators of gender-based violence and put them in those centers so that you can change their psyche. This, for me, is one of the strongest lessons I've learned today that I think we could be looking at moving forward. During this lockdown, in our attempt to alleviate poverty in homes that which would have had catastrophic consequences for women in particular, as they suffered great income losses and the primary caregivers to children. We established the Central Food Bank in Springs Fresh Produce. The food bank was established as a distribution point where emergency relief donations in the city will be received and distributed to the distressed households that had lost income due to the lockdown. At the heart of this initiative was to ensure that vulnerable groups would not be left behind. It was for this reason that a sizable proportion of the food parcels donated were given to specific sectoral targeted that included child-headed households, vulnerable women who are the victims or survivors of gender-based violence, the LGBTQA plus community, the old age homes and orphanages, as well as sex workers. I must say that about 123 organizations or donors made donations to the consumables and non-consumable goods estimated at just over 10 million, and these enabled us to distribute a total of over 32,721 distressed households, consisting of about 163,605 residents that benefited from this initiative, with an average household consisting of at least about 5 people, with an outlier of 3 to 15 members in the household. Having made all these interventions, we recognize that a lot more still need to be done. It is for this reason that we've converged here today as government with other stakeholders in business, civil society, academic, to chart the way forward on how we can sustainably fight this insidious scourge that is gender-based violence and femicide. As government, we cannot do this on our own. We need all hands on the deck from our communities to have to every home where this violence is happening. I must say that we have made some stride in some of the movement. For instance, if you look at the members of the mayoral committee, we have sought to ensure that we elevate the issues of women. Of the 10 members of the mayoral committee, at least 6 are female, which gives us hope that as an institution of government, we acknowledge and recognize the role of women in our city. And we pride ourselves being the first city in South Africa, metro in South Africa, to have the first female city manager who has helped us to stabilize the institution. And this goes to show that women too have a lot of role to play. So as our over 10 HODs that are female who are helping us to run the institution here. I'm raising these strides just to demonstrate that women are not object of men. Women can make a contribution in changing the life in this city. The matter of Mayor Ntabiseng Dikgale and the protection of the abuser is a matter that will be receiving attention immediately after this. And I must say that we will not rest. We will make sure that we put all the resources in place to make sure that this matter finds finality, because we cannot allow women to be abused in our city. I will be commissioning the directorate to work together with yourselves and myself to make sure that justice is served in the matter that you have raised. We have heard your plea. In conclusion, Program Director, the Indian feminist activist and writer Arundhati Roy says that the marginalized, and I quote, "There is really no such thing as voiceless. they are only those deliberately silenced or preferably unheard. Women enduring violence in our country are not voiceless, they are silenced. They are not voiceless, they are preferably unheard. Today we come together here to say, let them be heard, for their voices, their lives, experiences matter. In understanding this, we can architect and fashion higher civilization. I want to take this opportunity to thank all those that have participated here, those that have shared different experiences, and say that this should not be a talk show. We must be able to emerge out of this dialogue to say what is it that we are going to be doing, working together to ensure that women and children are saved and patriarchy is destroyed in all manner of manifestation. I thank you, Program Director.
Thank you, Executive Mayor. Thank you, Executive Mayor. Indeed, this program today must not be a talk show, but we must be able to implement all the resolutions that we're gonna have today around our program. Also, I want to thank all our participants and panelists, the Woman Caucus, Chair of Chairs, and the staff who made sure that this program today is successful. Executive Mayor and all our participants today. Now we're gonna go to the second sessions, but before we go then, we're saying today, we are saying whenever you are, the descendants of Mam Charlotte Maxeke, Mam Victoria Mxenge, May Sophie DeBrain, May Mary Moodley, May Helen Josephs are outraged, and we will end the narrative on gender-based violence. Sekwanele manje, enough is enough. Now I'm gonna hand over to my co-facilitator, Advocate Kate Kemi Behari. But all participants that want to contribute are going to be given a space in the second session as to when one have a contribution that wants to make, we're going to have a place where we're going to discuss around all the points that were raised today. So I'm going to hand over to my facilitator, Advocate Kemi Behari. Over to you, Advocate.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I hope you can hear me clearly. Hello?
Yeah, we do hear you.
All right, thank you. I think we've had a good platform for the early morning session, especially with our leaders already showing the support. One thing you would have noticed, colleagues, is the technology issues, which are very symbolic. When the survivor was speaking, she seemed to have been muted and it seemed to be beyond her control. And we had team leaders or other members who urged her to continuously unmute. Let us take that symbolism to say, let's talk about it. Let's encourage each other to speak about these issues. So it gives me great pleasure to chair the second session or facilitate the second session. We have many speakers today. If I can ask the speakers, please, we are running a bit out of time, but if you can have your impact points to keep within the time limit, so we have at least a greater time slot later to do some more engagement. And on the note of this not being a talk show or a talk session, the gender unit of in the mayor's office has already been very active in supporting rape victims and victims of human trafficking and so on. So this is just another link to that, where we're going to get greater impetus as we go along. So with that in mind, colleagues, let us start off this session with the first speaker, Ms. Connie Ramatibela. Thank you, Ms. Connie. Can you indicate if you're here and come on, unmute and put on yourself for the video. Thank you. Ms. Ramatibela, are you around? Hello? Going? We'll come to the, probably we'll come back to you, Ms. Ramatebela. Let's move on to the next one. Localization of GBV response. Ms. G. Malloy, are you around?
Hello, I'm here, Cllr Mzwandile.
Okay, yes, thank you, Mr. Ramatebela. Can you proceed, please? Then we'll come back to Ms. Malloy thereafter. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Program Director, Executive Mayor, and all the MMCs and guests. I greet you all. So mine is to give an input or a presentation on the root causes or on the drivers of gender-based violence. So for us to understand the root causes, it's important that we understand it so that we can be able to develop intervention and prevention actions that are effective. And our strategies should really focus on the individual, community, and the society as a whole. So there are many factors that contribute to GBV. That is your physical, sexual, economic, and psychological harm to victims. So it is essential that we address the risk of becoming a victim or a perpetrator, and also addressing the norms and beliefs, the societal economic systems that create opportunities for intimate partner relations. Just to take a snapshot from the crime stats on the causes of femicide, although they don't put it as femicide, they put it as murder. So social behavior is the main cause, like your domestic violence, arguments, your misunderstandings, revenge, which are influenced by the lack of social skills, dysfunctional families, and relationships, the greed, unemployment, abuse of alcohol, and substance abuse. Also, the proliferation of firearms really it's a problem. So Gauteng is among 30 30 stations that reported on high rates on the contact crimes. So 14 of the stations in Ekurhuleni is true, which that is taking a lead. Tembisa and Ivory Park. Also, Tsakane takes a lead on sexual offenses. So the contributors or the triggers on an individual level can be the loss of security and dependency, the childhood exposure to GBV and sexual violence, as it was mentioned earlier by the previous speaker, and also the physical and mental disabilities. Those put people on vulnerability, and also the alcohol.
Sorry, Mr. Ramatebela, can you adjust your screen a little bit? Just push it towards so we can see you.
Oh, can you see me now?
A little back, I think.
Back.
The screen, yeah, the screen. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Oh. Thank you, Advocate. And also the ignorance of other people's rights, really. Unemployment and poverty-related stress can also be the root cause, and access to dangerous weapons. In terms of our community or society, the social norms like the discriminatory cultural, traditional, and family beliefs, women are seen as subordinate to men. So that is clearly patriarchy. The gender norms, the expectations of male dominance, power and entitlement over women's bodies, marginalized groups as well, like the LGBTQI communities or persons, some of the religious beliefs, poverty and structural inequality in our community. So we also see violence as a tool to control women. Is tolerated. We've noted that it's tolerated as a conflict resolution means, and also some legal frameworks are not really protecting women. So there is lack of confidence in the legal system. The system is gender insensitive, and there are limited campaigns against bail of the perpetrators. And the underreporting also of the crimes against women and children, the minimal sentencing and the low conviction rate, it also discourages women. So also the limited frontline health workers, frontline workers, also female workers. Also, it's another problem that may lead victims not to participate in the criminal justice system in terms of reporting. So there are consequences in all of this. So if they are not addressed, so we might have a health and psychological and psychosocial problems and even death. Which we've experienced on the public spaces not long ago. So there are also long-term emotional effects and physical trauma. So the interventions that needs to be strengthened or others needs to be established: counseling, parenting programs, and support programs, because we really need to zoom into our families. What is the role of the families in all of this? And also legislative commitments, like we have started now. We have seen that there are legislation that have geared towards stopping corporal punishment, especially in homes, so that we can really break the cycle of violence. So the reduction of liquor outlets, we have lessons that we have learned through COVID-19 in reducing or in closing the liquor outlet that we've seen. That's the rate of GBV slowly went down with the closing of the liquor outlet, like to increase the taxes on liquor and rather let's increase the access to the healing programs or the treatment programs for men. So advocacy and awareness campaigns against patriarchy in the society. We need to increase economic empowerment of women to break the cycle of dependency and the cycle of violence, and also the resources that are targeting men and boys to effect behavior change. We need to support those, increasing address throughout the value chain of the criminal justice system. So we need campaigns, training, and empowerment programs targeting schools to talk to children to address the issues to avoid the abuse and address the stereotypes and equality norms, etc. So the immediate response to gender-based violence is very critical. So information should be available of all the services that are there, and also increase access and support to criminal justice system services. Also make use of the toll-free numbers, because people really, with COVID-19 restrictions, they are trapped with the abusers. So they may not be able to go out and report cases, but toll-free numbers can continue, and also to support research to assist us. So I think I will pause there because of time. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate it, and thank you for the insightful talk. Before we go to Ms. Moloi, please, colleagues, can I remind you, you can use the chat forum, you can use your emails, and at the end of the session, we will have a chance where you can raise your hands and we can look at solutions going forward. So with that in mind, please, Ms. Moloi, are you around?
Yes, I'm around, sir.
All right. Thank you. Please, it's your platform. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Grace Moloi. I am the Victim Empowerment Coordinator for Gauteng Department of Social Development in the Ekurhuleni region. I'm going to be doing a PowerPoint presentation, so I need just 1 second just to flag it. Can you see the presentation?
Not yet, ma'am. It's just your files that are showing there. There's no presentation as yet.
Is it? Okay.
Do you want to maybe talk through the presentation, Ms. Molloy, and then we will share that with the administrators thereafter in order to save time, or you want to come back? Let me go with another speaker, and then you come back?
Okay, no, it's fine. I can talk to the presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, my presentation outline is as follows. I'm going to be doing the purpose and the response by our department to GBV and femicide in Ekurhuleni, the challenges that we face and the recommendation thereof. The purpose is to outline the services that Gauteng Department of Social Development has in Ekurhuleni region and highlight challenges that hamper effective and efficient service delivery in terms of GBV and also make recommendations. As the Department of Social Development, we are responsible in the area for victim empowerment program, of which gender-based violence is the main issue that we are faced with. As the department, from our side, we have services that are rendered by social workers within the department who have the mandate to specifically deal with gender-based violence victims or cases. We have 6 social workers for now, and there's 1 in each cluster in the region. Those social workers are responsible for the professional services. They're responsible for family cases, individual cases. They're also responsible to do prevention work and awareness campaigns, specifically for gender-based violence.
No, apologies. Apologies. Can you please exit that the presentation on the screen there, and so we can proceed, because so we can. Is it off your computer? We can see the all the files there. Can you quickly remove that for us?
Okay. Okay. Is it?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes.
All right. Thanks. Okay, and then I was sharing that our social workers within the department, there are those that are specific to gender-based violence, looking at all the cases of gender-based violence. They are also working with the courts, all the cases that go through the court for gender-based violence that are referred to us, they attend to them. They also attend to all the cases that come through our National Gender-Based Violence Command Center. And then we have the Victim Empowerment Program colleagues who are working with NPOs that are rendering services in terms of gender-based violence. These colleagues are supposed to develop all the NPOs that come through to us to say, we would like to render gender-based violence services. So we guide them through the processes of what is expected for you to be running those services from the professional side, from our funding as the Department of Social Development, our priorities that have to do with that. And we take them through, if we are going to be funding them, we also process that, and thereafter we will monitor their services. And then those NPOs that we are working with, they run shelters for abused women and children. So meaning all the shelters that are registered in Ekurhuleni that are doing services for abused women and children are funded by the department and are also monitored on their services for the department. And we have also NPOs that are doing men and boys services. These concentrate on assisting men and boys, and also they do perpetrator program. I heard Mr. Shai talking about intimate partner violence. We also have such in Ekurhuleni, such services. We have about 4 of our organizations running those programs. Okay, and then we also participate in the Tutuzela care centers. We fund social workers that are are hired by our NPOs that are giving counseling services in the Tutuzela care centers. And then we have the one in Cllr Mzwandile, which is run by our Egupoleni NPO. And then we have one in the Tembisa area at the hospital, which is our assistance there is with POWA as our NPO that is working with us. Of course, we have the other partners, that is NPA, health, the police, and other services there. And then we also fund as a department the victim-friendly rooms. Some would know them as the victim empowerment centers that are based at the various police stations in our area. I was a little bit disturbed to hear our mentor be saying our survivor, specifying even a police station where she was not getting services. But like the mayor was saying that those will be followed up and we make sure that the proper services are given to our victims. In the victim-friendly rooms, we also work with NPOs where there are volunteers who are there 24 hours in the police stations, and then we have a social worker that is attached and social auxiliary workers that are attached from our NPOs working in those police stations. At the moment, we have a problem of not being able to support all of them financially, but there are some of them that are funded, our police stations for those victim-friendly rooms. Of course, we have professional counseling services done mostly by our social workers in the NPOs. And then as a region, we coordinate and facilitate a regional victim empowerment forum, which before COVID-19, we were running it every quarter. And our NPOs attend that forum, and our other government departments that we are working with are part of that forum. As a department, we also coordinate and facilitate the celebration and commemoration of international and national days. So when it comes to Women's Month, we are supposed to have some programs in the region. We target different, because Ekurhuleni is quite big, we target different communities that we will work with during that month. And then a follow-up is made wherever we got some challenges or wherever there's a need for more services, we manage to build relationships there and carry on with those communities. Women's Month, Trafficking in Persons Week, 16 Days of Activism, those are some of the national and international days that we coordinate in the region. And then we also attend our provincial forums. There are different forums. There is a forum for victim-friendly rooms. There is a forum for men and boys. There is a bigger forum for all government departments that are dealing with victim empowerment that we are part of as Ekurhuleni, together with our NPOs, together with other government departments that we work with. And then I just wanted to just share a little bit that we have 6 shelters in our region for abused women and their children. And as I said earlier, 4 organizations helping us with the Men and Boys program. We have quite a number of organizations that are helping us with the victim empowerment counseling services. We have one particular one that is dealing mostly with cases of children, helping them with court preparation, helping them with sexual abuse cases that have to go through the courts, and the normal counseling services that would go on for months for those children, which is Kids Clinic. It's based in Boksburg. And then we have other organizations that I would share when I had the time, but I will share this presentation and then the mayor's office can share. And then we have also services for at the moment, the funded services for the victim friendly rooms is for the Tembisa, Kempton Park, Olifantsfontein area. And then we also have for Germiston, Primrose, we have Katlehong, North and South. We have Togoza, we have Recher Park, we also have Eden Park. At the moment, those are the ones that we have been able to fund, but we are also working towards all the services for victim-friendly rooms to be funded by the department. Okay, the challenges that we face, of course, limited funding. As you have heard in my presentation, you will see that some of the things we want to reach so many people, we want, because of this cash, it's really raveling our country, is really causing a lot of havoc in our country. But limited funding also makes it difficult to reach everyone that we would like to reach. There is limited staff on the side of the department, on the side of other departments, and as well as on the side of NPOs, you know, to be able to reach everyone. And then another challenge that we face is skewed services. Like as we talk, if you heard a lot of people talking in the morning, it seems like our men and boys, most of the time, it's like they are also not reached enough to be empowered enough to know that this is wrong, what they are doing to our women and girls. So we also need to try and balance that scale to say, as we empower our women, as we empower our girls, we also need to empower our boys to make sure that they don't fall into the trap of being abusers. And then we have another challenge of competition versus partnership, in a sense that we will find that we have a number of, you know, service providers, we have a number of stakeholders that together can do a better job, but each one wants to do their own thing. And it makes it difficult, you know, to reach our victims that we would like to reach. And then there is a lack of office space, mostly for NPOs, and would really like to plead with our municipality to assist us with that, because some of them, you know, they don't have much capacity in terms of funding to be able to pay for, you know, offices that are most of the time expensive for them to be able to reach our communities. And then in our NPOs, mostly the staff turnover, so there's no continuity really, you know, to make sure that when you have a victim that you're trying to assist, you follow through with everything to make sure that they are empowered enough to be able to be survivors, you know, because today they see this person, tomorrow it's somebody else, because also, you know, people would like to move, and, you know, people are always looking for better positions, so that also is really a hurdle for us. And then with victim empowerment and gender-based violence, colleagues, we all know that we have to have professional people working there. So we get ourselves having more non-professionals wanting to give professional services. And then our different policies and culture, whether it's in government or it's in NPOs, it's like sometimes we work against each other because everybody is rushing for their own, you know, stats. Everybody wants to make sure that they reach their own goals within the year. So we don't attend each other's meetings because we have other things to do. So we end up not coordinating properly. I heard Pastor Nzo was talking a whole lot about coordination that has to be done by the different stakeholders, which will strengthen this service a lot in our area. And then demarcations that come with whether it's municipality or DSD, like our demarcations are not the same. We have to work a lot on that so that we make sure that while we work, we reach people properly. We don't concentrate too much on our demarcations. And then in Ekurhuleni, we do not have an accredited shelter for trafficking in persons victims. So that's also a challenge, because shelters that are working, any services that is done with trafficking in persons, because remember, this is also a different one with a whole lot of syndicate issues, a whole lot of violence linked to it, a whole lot of intelligence linked to it. So we need to be prepared before we take on trafficking in person services. Yeah, and at the end, let me just say at the end and not do my recommendations, because I think they came through quite clearly, just to give important numbers. The National Gender-Based Violence Command Center is 0800 428 428. And then there's a please call number, star 120 star 7867 hash. And then the other numbers for the region I will give as we go along. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, colleagues. I think what was important about it is there's a lot of synergies and there's a lot of efforts that we can do together in the city of Ekurhuleni. Let us now move into the session with Commissioner O'Hara Diseko. Commissioner, are you around? Morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
It's your platform, Commissioner. Welcome. Thank you very much. Mandy, over to you.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Cllr Mzwandile, and I am a commissioner at the Commission for Gender Equality. And I'm just going to be sharing with you some of the work and the ways in which the Commission can assist and respond to this issue of gender-based violence.
My apologies, Ms. Mofokeng. The program spoke to O'Hara. My apologies. So welcome, Ms. Mofokeng. Thank you very much, Dr. Mofokeng.
No problem. Thank you. So as the Commission for Gender Equality, our mandate is to promote, protect, advance, and develop gender equality in the country. And through our legal team, research, public education, and now with COVID-19 restrictions, we've been holding virtual community town hall meetings that all of them assist us in terms of performing our oversight and monitoring role. And it's important that as the Gender Commission to convey to the members of the public, to the stakeholders, and all of us here from the mayor's office, all the MMCs and the managers, that the Commission remains available to exercise its legislative role, even during lockdown. And most importantly, this is done in the spirit of cooperative governance, and because we firmly, believe in our Constitution and all those rights that are enshrined in the Constitution, particularly around the issues of the right to equality, the right to dignity, and the right to live in societies that are free from violence. It is important to ensure that those who are in the periphery of society, and this can be based on certain vulnerabilities such as age, gender, sexual orientation, poverty, drug use, criminalization in the instance of sex work, undocumented migrants, people with various bodily and cognitive abilities, and therefore all the solutions must be informed by a literal consideration and inclusivity of such individuals. During the lockdown, the Gender Commission has been able to carry out our mandate, and in terms of gender-based violence specifically, we have been assisting and are able to continue offering assistance in terms of child maintenance matters, issues of sexual harassment, both in the private and public sector as well as workspaces. We continue to assist in terms of gender discrimination, and to this end, we do assist on our own accord to investigate or investigate any complaints that then come to the Commission through the various ways of complaints and mechanisms. We continue to assist with handling of complaints on urgent cases that are related to GBV and femicide, sexual assault, rape, and domestic violence. A lot of what has happened, and a few speakers have alluded to this, that during the lockdown, especially at 11/5, with the curfews, it became really difficult for survivors or people who are living under the threat of violence to literally access services. And so there have been some instances where the Commission has been able to refer cases to different Thuthuzela care centers, the say SEPs, as well as NPA. We are also able to deal with complaints to relevant authorities. We've heard Ntabi saying, share her story of being a survivor, and how even as she was telling that story, she detailed really details of how different law enforcement agencies have let her down as an individual. But we know this is a systemic issue, and it's an issue that is experienced by many, many survivors. And it's part of the reason why people remain silent, because as survivors, the courage it takes to speak out and be in the public, sometimes, you live with that stigma of being a survivor and never really get to effective justice. And the issue of timeous response is very important too, because sometimes, and for many survivors, they literally only have one chance to safely escape their abuse. Some of our biggest concerns as the Commission is the ongoing issue regarding lack of access to post-rape services. And this is a generalized issue in the country, but of course, when we focus on the city of Ekurhuleni, it is important to talk about the Thuthukela's care centers. Are they close enough to the communities that need them? Are we able to, as a city of Ekurhuleni, look at the statistics that the SEPs keep churning out? Do we get enough granular details to become better enabled to draw a picture, to know about incidences, to know about certain structural drivers, and pinpoint directly in which communities in city of Ekurhuleni are experiencing which types of pressure? We also know that the lack of forensic nursing and lack of forensic doctors, as well as forensic social workers, does impact the service that the survivors end up getting, and the poor coordination between SAPS, NPA, as well as the health department, particularly on the issue of DNA kits, contributes to long waiting times for examination and evidence control. The Commission has also done various research reports as well as legal investigative reports looking particularly at the issues of gender-based violence and the preparedness of the South African Police Service to respond. And, from 2012, 2014, 2015, and 2016, we have various reports that talk to the fact that there needs to be a bit more coordination. The victim-friendly rooms, unfortunately, remain understaffed, under-resourced, and there's an end-user feedback around issues of privacy and comfort. What's also important is to talk about the lack of shelters that are able to intake LGBTIQA plus individuals, women together with their children and their belongings. At the moment, the intake protocols are such that if, as a woman, you enter the shelter, you cannot bring your children, your belongings. If you are gay, lesbian, transgender, you have another layer of discrimination and prejudice that isn't even related to your perpetrator, where you are now actually engaging with the systems that are supposed to be assisting you. You are then met with another layer of discrimination, another reason why people then don't seek assistance. The rollout of immediate psychological support is very important in the immediate, but we also have to think long term. The impact of gender-based violence and that trauma is lifelong. A lot of mood disorders, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear comes from the fact that we haven't put enough thought and planning around long-term psychosocial assistance, which is why then I think as the city of Ekurhuleni, the issue of transition housing is really important, because transition housing is different from a shelter in the acute stage of violence and trauma. We do need to think about restoration of dignity and what that looks like. And we can really only know that when we listen to survivors' guidance and have them around the table when we come up with the different plans and strategies. And for us at the Commission, we are mandated by our Act to be a catalyst, to monitor and ensure that all stakeholders are rendering services and do so without unreasonable delays. And it's therefore on the back of that that I want to say to the Executive Mayor of Ekurhuleni that the Gender Commission continues to be available to assist in some of the structural fault lines that exist, that need to be systematically fixed. And today's meeting is one such a moment, but we do need to have tangible timelines and deliverables so that we keep all of us and each other accountable. It's an important step amongst many other steps, and I think that in fact the levels of violence and the types of violence mean that this issue of gender-based violence and femicide in Ekurhuleni needs to be resourced and driven by the Office of the Executive Mayor, drawing directly from the National Strategic Plan for Gender-Based Violence to ensure that that document finds expression in the work of a city of Ekurhuleni. And again, I want to say that we remain available as the CGE. We have a lot of expertise, we have a lot of legal reports and research reports that support the work that we do. And it's for all of us to ensure that the city of Ekurhuleni and the citizens are more than just surviving, but they are thriving. And for them to thrive, we really have to look at operationalizing and institutionalizing this NSP for GBV. And the number, just for those who are listening, that they can get hold of the commission, it's 0800 007 709, or you can send an email to complaints@cge.org.za, and we can then further take this discussion forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity just to share in a nutshell the work of the commission and what we think should be some of the top priorities for the city of Ekurhuleni. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doctor, and thank you for the eagerness shown from the outset to participate, and especially from a very vital Chapter 9 institution. We appreciate it. Colleagues, as we move on, I'm wondering whether Mr. Johnson, are you here, sir? Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right. And Mrs. Mosese, are you here? Ms. Mosese? Okay, Mr. Johnson, I was hoping maybe we could change the sessions, but please proceed, sir. The platform is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Mayor, members of the Mayor's Council, City Manager and her executive, social society, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thabo Johnson, a founder of an organization called African Society for Cybersecurity Awareness. We focus on 3 critical elements, which is cyber violence against women and girls, cyber safety for kids, and online parenting. Listening to my colleagues speaking about gender-based violence, the development and what government has achieved is actually encouraging, because we believe that cyber violence against women and children is as equivalent as a traditional gender-based violence. The recent study by the United Nations has actually declared cyber violence as pandemic in Europe, where about 64% of women are being abused online by men and unknown people within the connectivity world. Now, coming back to our country, there isn't much that is done by government on cyber violence, or even the understanding of cyber-based violence within the country. We have experienced challenges when trying to engage government on the matter, but we'd like to thank the city of Ekurhuleni for being the champion of dealing with cyber violence, cyberbullying, and cyber-related crimes online, because they did give us funds to make sure we create an awareness to the people of Ekurhuleni and of Gauteng irrespective. Now, when we look at what caused the challenge we're having, South Africa's got about 52 to 53 million plus people. We have 36 million people connected on the internet, which is more than 50% of our communities connected on the internet. And with the recent challenges on COVID-19, government, corporate encourage people to connect to the internet without providing any framework on how to protect themselves. Now, what that meant that our people get exposed to one of the most dangerous platform you can think of, because the internet doesn't have rules, doesn't have morals, doesn't have boundaries, and moreover, sometimes you may not even know who is the person that is attacking you. So we believe that there needs to be a proper framework developed by government to protect our people on the internet. And we need to start understanding why was the internet formed and social media. And we believe that social media was formed for people to connect to each other and for people to share information and be able to get proper information for research or improving their life. But social media has been used for wrong reason, which resulted in cyber violence becoming one of the most common aspects of internet connectivity. When we look at what are the prawns that created or that are busy creating the issue of cyber violence. Cyber violence focuses on the following things: sexual harassment, human trafficking, cyberbullying, revenge pornography, and stalking. Now, that has increased, and South Africa now is rated as number 3 in the world on cyber violence against women and children. And the dangers of cyber violence is that, as my father used to say, be afraid of a silent patient. Is because of we don't see blue eyes and blood, people don't take it seriously. But as you all know that in recent last year, a child in Pretoria school committed suicide for being bullied online. We all know that children don't understand what are the impact of being online and sharing information that is damaging to them whilst they are online. Cyber violence has created a lot of disadvantage for women, and one of the exercises that we promote from AXA is for young girls to understand that they are extraordinary and they're worth it and they deserve to be online. There's no need for them to send nude pictures to try to impress people so that they can be accepted online. They need to behave properly and to make sure that they don't give anyone any opportunity to target them or hurt them. And some of the people are not even aware, especially politicians, on the impact of what they tweet or what they communicate online, which has got a huge harmful effect on the community and the people that they are targeting, especially our children. We have not established any mechanism in South Africa to make sure that we protect our children, to make sure that our children are safe and they know how to use social media and how to be connected and be on the internet. We have engaged national government, Department of Communication, the presidency on the matter, and we still haven't received much from the discussion therefore. However, when you look at the statistics of how many of our children are suffering in silence, you then realize that the problem that we are facing in South Africa is becoming worse and worse and worse. And we need to act before it's too late. Where countries like America have put down something like $19 billion to fight cybercrime, South Africa has put 256,000 to do the same job as part of their way in terms of dealing with cyber violence. we realized that we need to develop what we call a cyber victim center, where we'll have psychologists for children that are afraid to be shamed and afraid to come clean. And we need to engage with the South African justice system, because 99% of South African police, I'm exaggerating the term, don't even understand what cyber violence is or what cyberbullying is. We did some exercise where we went to 1 or 2 police stations to lay charges of cyberbullying. And the response we got from the police was that we tell a child to change the phone or buy him a new SIM card because of the lack of understanding. We need to get parents to monitor and assist their children. There's no child of the age of less than 18 who needs to be independent on their mobile phone or connecting to social media without parental guidance. You can't give your child a car to drive without making sure they learn how to drive. And part of the program that we need to engage is to get, together with the municipality, is to get a training for parents and employees to be able to protect and manage their children social media and be able to know what's going on their side. A lot of children are now being exposed to human trafficking because of how they expose themselves and how they deal with lack of confidence. Therefore, they end up getting attacked by perpetrators to steal them from their own country. It's going big in the country, and we're not even aware how big is the problem. We don't know how many of the children have left school or dropped out because of being abused. We know how many children we see on social media that are exposed and are threatened by their boyfriends or men, bless us, to do sex act because they've got nude pictures that they threaten them with. We need to be able to educate our parents under the digital parenting. We need to keep the message going. We need to engage with the gender-based violence committee and subcommittees to be able to engage and train them on how cyber violence is becoming more stronger than the traditional gender-based violence. And as a result, we believe that in partnership with the city and other civil society, South Africa can reduce from being number 3 worldwide to at least get out of the top 10 on children that are being abused through internet connectivity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. I think the change in scenery with the cyber aspects is welcome as well. There's a lot of lack of understanding in terms of that, even the evidentiary material that needs to be done. I see our last speaker, Ms. Mosese. Are you around, ma'am? Ms. Mosese? Yes, I see your video. Can you unmute, please, Ms. Mosese? Ms. Mosese, welcome to this. It's your time. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Good afternoon, the program director, Advocate Behari, the executive mayor, the MCs, and all the participants of today's topic. I agree with all what have been said so far. We need to place the needs of the victim first, and we already have good laws such as Domestic Violence Act, the Sexual Offense Act, the Criminal Procedure Act, the Human Trafficking Act, the Harassment Act, as well as the Maintenance Act. And we, the people that make up the criminal justice system, need to do better. And there are certain steps which are being taken in this direction. For the sake of brevity, my presentation today will focus on the proposed amendments to GBV laws, namely Criminal Laws, that is Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Bill, the Criminal Matter Amendment Bill, and the Domestic Act Amendment Bill. I'll touch briefly on some of the most pertinent proposed amendments. Let's now touch briefly on the proposed amendments to the Domestic Violence Act. Expanded definition in Section 1 of the bill, including the addition of definitions like controlling behavior and coercive behavior, are particularly helpful in providing a more detailed description of domestic violence. Similarly, the addition of sexual harassment as component of sexual abuse is also welcome. Interim protection orders. Section 5(6) provides that an interim protection order is of force and effect from the time it's issued by the court, and the existence and contents thereof has been brought to the attention of the respondent. We know that in many instances the police are unable to serve their interim orders, and respondents claim to be unaware of the interim protection orders. This section aims to remedy this loophole in protecting complainants from harm. And the final protection orders. The bill also makes allowance for the court to issue a final protection order in the absence of the complainant attending the hearing. It also makes provision for the court to issue a final protection order in the absence of both parties attending the hearing. And Section 5(3) establishes a central electronic depository for protection of orders. Section 5(3), this is an important innovation which will advance access to justice. Furthermore, it will ensure that regardless of whether court files go missing, there will be a backup through an electronic database. Providing an electronic database will ensure better data collection. And when it comes to the Sexual Offences Amendment Bill, the current law says that the offenders who are convicted of a sexual offense against a child or person who's mentally disabled is not allowed to work with the children or people who are mentally disabled. The new bill proposes to prohibit any offender who is convicted of any sexual offense to work with people who are vulnerable. In other words, the bill now says that if a person is convicted of any sexual offense, not only sexual offenses committed against a child or mentally disabled persons, for example, the rape of an adult woman, that offender is not allowed to work with any vulnerable person. And vulnerable persons are not limited more to children and mentally disabled persons, but now include a child, a person younger than 25 years who attends a range of higher education institutions, that is a university student and so on, a person with a physical, intellectual, or mental disability, a person who is older than 60 years and who receives community-based care and support services, or lives in a residence of older people, or is kept for in a facility that gives 24-hour care to older persons, or receives care or services from a caregiver and does not live in a residence for older people. These people, how will the Criminal Amendment Act bill change the law? The bill is the government's response to the president's recent promises to make it more difficult for persons accused of crimes involving sexual gender-based violence to get bail.
make it more difficult for persons accused of crimes involving SGBVF to get parole, to make the minimum sentence for crime involving SGBVF harsher than what they are now. For instance, police bails, that is the bail that can be given by the police at the police station before an accused appears before court for minor offenses. The amendment bill will have the effect of making it impossible in the future to get police bail for anyone who's accused of an offense against someone with whom they are in a domestic relationship, such as assaulting a partner, an ex, or a family member, and so on. Anyone who's accused of violating a protection order, and the prosecution bail, that is where the prosecutor grants bail at the police station before the accused appears before court, that will also be affected, and the bill have the effect of also making it impossible in the future to get prosecutor bail for anyone who is accused of committing an offense against someone with whom they are in a domestic relationship, or anyone who is accused of violating a protection order. Bail application. Anyone who is charged with contravention of a protection order or interfering or final protection order against the accused, what's going to happen is that if you are charged with any offense which include SGV, the accused will not be released unless he testifies and convinces the court that it will be in the interest of justice that he be granted bail. And there's a duty on the prosecutor if he's not opposing bail. He must tell the court why he's not opposing bail. He must furnish reasons as to why he is not opposing bail. So the same applies to the defense. There's a duty on the defense to disclose to the court that the accused has a protection order against him, or there's interim protection order against him, failing which such bail can be revoked if it was already granted. And if the court receives information on all that an accused failed to tell the court at the bail hearing that the victim has an interim or final protection order against them, the court can immediately cancel an accused bail and issue a warrant of arrest. And sentence and parole. Clause 5 of the bill changes the law on parole to ensure that when a court sentences the accused to 10 or more years imprisonment for an offense committed by a person against someone with whom they are in a domestic relationship, the court must inform the victim that they have a right to attend the accused parole board hearings and to tell the parole board how they would feel about the accused being paroled. And the minimum sentence rule is going to play a very important role as far as all the offenses where SGV is concerned. The law has now changed, and the court, you know, that for first offenders 10 years, second offenders 15, and the third offenders 20 years. All that is going to be changed now, because in the past where a child was raped, life imprisonment was imposed. So the same is going to apply now, where the offense include gender violence gender violence based. And furthermore, that is the minimum sentence is going to be applicable, and therefore the sentences imposed for rape and so on are going to change drastically. And during the bail application, the court has a right to hold an inquiry and make an interim protection order if the complainant didn't make it previously. And if there was already a protection order against the accused that should be brought to the attention of the court. So the victims are going to be protected drastically. There won't be any free bails. The minimum sentence is going to protect the victims and so on. And one other thing, we in the Department of Justice, it's about time that we are sensitized about the sensitivity of domestic violence and so on. So in Benoni, we've adopted an approach whereby at least once a month, the police, the judiciary, prosecutors, social workers, all stakeholders, we have a workshop to sensitize all of us as to how to approach this. You'll find that a victim or survivor has been in an abusive relationship for a period of 20 years. She comes to the court and she can't explain what happened because of the trauma. You can't reduce on paper what transpired for a period of 20 years. As a result, we as judicial officers must be sensitive enough to guide this person, to explain to us what really transpired from the beginning. When did you get married? How long have you been with this person? Are you married? And so on. When did the abuse start? And so on. So that we get a better picture of what really transpired. The other thing is the language barrier, because every time we'll need an interpreter to come and help this poor person to explain what happened. And we also got complaints about the police. As a result, we sat down with all the police officers from every police station to come and address this and check whether how can we work as a team to overcome this problem in that area, that is Benoni area. They all attended and we had a way forward, and as a result, every police station gave us the name of the police officers who will be in charge for domestic violence, whether it's the day shift or the night shift, so that when there is a problem, we have our own people who we can confront and say, you are responsible for domestic violence. You were supposed to serve this and you didn't this. You must be accountable for everything. So as a result, we are having a way forward, but we got disturbed by the coronavirus, but we're going to continue with our workshops and working hand in hand and seeing to it that as a team we can help the community of Benoni and overcome the whole problem. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mosese. I did recognize the name from our group, and welcome to our session.
I would have to say, Advocate Behari and I were trained at UCT to study law, race, and gender.
No, welcome again, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we've come to a stage now where this is the last of the presentations we've had. We are running hopelessly out of time, almost an hour and a half overtime. And I think there's already been announcements that we can please submit your questions on the chats via email. So we'll try and address some of the critical issues. But what you've noticed from the first and second sessions was that there's a lot of common issues that have been captured. And I think Ms. Mosese really wrapped it up in terms of the legislation, because if you heard the concerns of Councillor Moko, we spoke about the legislation. I think the Criminal Law Amendment Act now is going to make a huge impact, especially on the electronic evidence that will be required. From now, maybe let's take about one or two questions for people who've been with us the whole morning. Thank you very much. You can show by raise of hands. I'll take two questions if you can address it to a particular person. But let's look at more a solution-driven, more suggestions going forward, then we can do the way forward and close off. Thank you. Okay, Zalila Bryan, you're the first. Please, can I ask you to? Okay, carry on, Ms. Zalila Bryan. More of the way of solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buhari. I'm from the organization called Amadoda Wenguquko, which is a community-based organization in Duduza. My submission is that we should involve more men organizations in the fight against gender-based violence, because mostly men are the perpetrators. So having men-orientated solutions, then we can be able to fight this scourge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the very progressive comments. Mr. Comfort Somyo. Mr. Comfort?
Hello, Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah. My name is, in fact, it's Mngedis. It's just that I'm known as Comfort. Mngedis is Somyo, the chairperson of CBF in Zagane.
Yeah, welcome.
My plea was that, Chair, can obviously the Department of Community Safety with others just embark on the awareness campaign, including all these organizations that are representing men, so that we must also be able to understand the reason. What's the reason behind all these things? You understand? So that we're having all those awareness campaigns, because sometimes it might have a problem somewhere. I'm not condoning what is happening, but I'm saying that we must also check so that we're able to assist the men on all the issues, including women, to say that maybe in terms of how you conduct yourself in these relationships, because sometimes certain things they happen between two people, So we must be able also to have all those awareness campaigns so that we're able to teach our communities of men and women on all these issues. But I'm urging mostly the Department of Community Safety, let's have all those things, because and include all the stakeholders within the ECAS, within Amalokshi, so that we're able to deal with this. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think I said we're looking at two as a way of, now we're going to go the way forward. I think, colleagues, we appreciate all your contributions, and especially the eagerness. But your hands, if you can, we want to, because as I said, we are hopefully out of time. Can you please send those things through the gender unit through Ms. Lindiwe Konjelwayo? Whatever questions, because we're going to have an integrated compilation of all the material, and we will lead all the questions and find solutions going forward. So on that basis, I just want to look at some issues in terms of a way forward, and I would think that the theme that has been here is that we're all extremely concerned about the gender-based violence that's happening in our country, not only for now, but quite a few years. We need to look at synergizing our efforts. It was a Chapter 9 institution involved today. We have justice involved. Maybe you're looking at other than National Prosecuting Authority and other authorities to answer, and SAPS and other police officers later on. But clearly there is a need for us to coordinate our efforts, get more people involved, perhaps even looking at the curriculum in the schools, your life orientation curriculum. Can we impact on that? The curriculum at universities, because these. I'm not sure who's colleagues. Thank you. Yeah. So these are some of the issues we're going to go way forward. It is not a static presentation. We are looking at continuous improvement, and we will be looking at, in the long term, short term and long term, how we're going to be dealing with the scourge of domestic violence and gender-based violence. From our side for today, we've come to the end of the presentations. Councillor Alderman Mabuza, are you available, sir? Alderman Councillor Mabuza.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I am available.
Thank you, ma'am. Please proceed with our vote of thanks, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I just want to thank each and every person who attended this session today. One, to thank the Office of the Executive Mayor to take the issue of gender-based violence serious. MMC Nkosi for coordinating this meeting with the officials. All our presenters from the first session to the second session. Our pastor, Pastor Nzo, and all people who participated today. This meeting is also an eye-opener to our stakeholders, because some of the people, when they are involved in gender-based violence, they tend to just to go to the police station to say this is a family matter. But today, I think all of us we have learned to say you end up being a victim for the rest of your life. And I also want to applaud Tate Shai, who grew up in the abusive family. He thought that is one of the things that must happen. But the commitment that he made, that he will bring up his children, not being an abusive man. He will make sure that those are men that are taking care of women in South Africa. So to all of you, because I'm also conscious with time, because we thought we were running late, but thank you very much to the organizers. I think this is not the end of the life, that we must just have this during August. MMC Moko said 365 days. So I think we'll adhere to the commitment that 365 days, no violence. We mustn't hide with this COVID-19. This thing has been happening for a long time. Most of the people, they will say it's because of the COVID-19 and all those things. That is not true. Thank you for very much for attending this session. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Awesalo.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu.
Ngiyazibongela.